Okay, good afternoon. Please introduce yourself and tell us which neighborhood you live in.
So my name is Michael Brandon Murphy, and I live in the Hearthstone-Brookstone neighborhood.
All right, well, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Brandon, what is your vision, both short and long term, for the Providence Master Homeowners Association?
Okay, so my vision short term is increased transparency, increased communication, and finishing some of the projects that have been long-standing in our community that have been a concern for some of our residents.
Okay.
Long term, it would be, again, I think the transparency thing carries throughout, but short-term transparency gains would be things like providing more information, more community involvement. Long-term would be documentation systems and places where people can go for information. And then long-term for the community itself, I think that's largely driven by the community itself. And so I think getting a lot of the projects finished first is kind of goal one, and then finding out what the community wants after those needs have been met is what my long-term goals would be.
Okay. So describe why you'd like to be on the board, and if given the opportunity, what do you see as a priority for the incoming board as a whole?
So I think finishing up the projects is definitely a priority for the board. I know that things like the park have been a major issue in the community. There was some discussion on monies that were set aside for other things. There's been a lot of landscape discussions. We know that the builders put in a lot of stuff, and there's people who want that thinned and changed. And I think each community, each sub-community within the larger community has a voice and an opinion, and all those things need to be brought into consideration. And so I think as a person coming on to the board, I think the first step is really understanding some of the things that we don't see at the community as large, right? What are some of the challenges the board is having? How can you be productive and help the board with those challenges? And then reaching out to that community and getting those projects and pieces fixed. Personally, why I'd like to be on the board is I run on my sub-board. Right now I'm a VP and a director, been there for 4 years. And I've been able to affect positive change within my sub-community. By listening to my my homeowners, right? Listening to my neighbors and my friends, and saying, hey, what's wrong? What can we do better? What can we fix? Even if it doesn't agree with me personally, I set that aside and we do what's best for the community.
Okay, great. Briefly describe what your skills and or experiences that would be of benefit to the overall success of the Master HOA.
Okay, so that's a little bit of a loaded question. I think it's important to have diversity and both in age, ethnical backgrounds, and experience backgrounds on a board. I think that's very important. And I'm a younger board member. I've got a young family. And I'm a working professional, like many people in our community. So I think I relate to a large portion of our community. I'm a security engineer, so I work on computer systems and I solve very complex problems very quickly. And I'm a logistics guy. So I think that some of the challenges that I would have maybe would be community outreach, those kind of type of things, but I think my strengths would be logistics, project planning, and keeping on top of the issues that we have to get them fixed and corrected as quickly.
Within the framework of the position you're running for, please share with us your strengths and weaknesses in regard to leadership.
Okay, so I think leadership is a unique property or a unique thing. I don't think that there's one example of leadership that would fit all situations. When it comes to a board, I think that it's more important to listen to your community versus lead the community. As a board member, yeah, you're making decisions and you're voting on things that you should be taking into account what's best for the community and not best for the individual. Being in the IT field and working with customers all the time, sometimes we have to do what's best for the customer, not best for us. And I think that I can bring those leadership qualities, running security teams, running businesses, running projects, all that will help. But I think what's most important as far as my leadership qualities are concerned is bringing the idea with me that it's not my decision alone, or it's not my effort alone. It's a community effort. It's a community decision. And I think that having that understanding is probably the strongest leadership skill that I'll bring to the table.
Okay, and then describe for us some strengths and weaknesses in regards to financial understanding, such as budgeting, expenditures, balance sheets, reserves.
Okay, so I'm not an accountant, so I would say that would probably be my largest weakness of budgeting, would be that I'm not an accountant. However, I do run many projects. I do budgeting for my 9 to 5 within projects. I'm not not an accountant, but I can understand budgeting. I can understand long-term projections. I don't have troubles with any of that kind of stuff. I think the best thing that I could bring to the table financial-wise and budgeting-wise is that I'm a numbers person, so I can take a projected growth or a projected expenditure and really weigh the overall good. I like to succeed long-term in gains versus short-term in gains. So, for example, if a project was going to cost a certain amount of money and it looks like a really good deal, but it's going to cost us a lot more money on the back end, of course we need to really consider that and possibly change, update, modify, or even cancel the project. A lot of times people forget that doing nothing is actually an option. Sometimes there's reserve monies or things like that we run into on the sub-HOAs, and sometimes doing nothing, if things are okay, sometimes doing nothing with that is actually better for the community in the long term because it saves money for future expenditures.
Mm-hmm. Okay, talk to us a little bit about your strengths and or weaknesses in regards to social, such as building and strengthening the sense of community.
Okay, so being an IT guy, I spend a lot of time on social media, those kind of things, so this may actually be somewhat a weak point for me. I deal with a core group of neighbors. I don't deal with a large group of neighbors regularly. I don't think really most of us have the time to do that. We hear all the time in Vegas that you get the Vegas wave, no one really knows their neighbors. So I would actually take that as a challenge on the board because I'm not as good at it. So I would involve experts in getting the community involved. I would also look for alternative activities that maybe are just a little bit outside of what we would call the norm or the 90%, that maybe introduce new skills or new ideas into our community. For example, I would love to see a program where it's volunteer, you could sign up and we could all meet at the park or meet at some venue and do a skills trade. So I'm an IT guy, right? I'm not really good at, taxes, right? Maybe there's a tax guy, or maybe I need legal advice, or maybe someone wants help setting up their home router. So I think that maybe taking and twisting that event a little bit, the ice cream socials and all that stuff are great, and I think that hits a big chunk of the community, especially in the kids areas. But I think that we could also focus on some of almost like a micro group of take a group of individuals that want to sign up and help each other out, and that stuff just kind of organically grows. And I think that we can then bring the people out of their homes and into the community that maybe don't have small children or that are lactose intolerant or something.
There you go. Okay, and then talk to us about strengths and weaknesses in regard to architectural, such as understanding established guidelines and their applications.
Okay, so I don't think anyone in the community is a stranger to the ARC. Mm-hmm. I would like to see some streamlined submitting process. I know with our sub-HOA, you have to print them out and you have to send them in and then they get forwarded to the master HOA. Mm-hmm. I would actually like to see a technology solution where it can all be submitted online, where you can update everything and it would go to your sub-HOA and then automatically roll up to to the master HOA. But when it comes to the guidelines themselves, I'm an IT guy. We live and die by rules. I'm an auditor by trade. So the evaluation of a rule to determine if it's still valid or not is important. And I think that needs to happen regularly. We need to look at the way that our community is changing. We need to look at the way that that we're evolving as a community and as a people, and we need to bring in rules that fit, and we need to retire rules that don't. As far as understanding individual guidelines, I think there's the letter of the guideline and there's the spirit of the guideline. And if those two things no longer align, then we need to update them or change them. I would also like to see a quick reference guide to the ARCs that provide a little more definition in a little plainer English, right? or in a little plainer speak, a little less lawyerese, a little more, everyday peopleese. And I think that would help with a lot of the confusion, because I think most ARC guideline confusion or problems that arise between the homeowners and the sub associations and master associations are just understanding of them. You read them; they're very long, and they don't seem to make sense as to why. So if a little bit of the spirit of the intent, along with a little bit of clarification of languages, could be presented to the homeowners, I think that and not replace the rules. I understand legalese has to be there, but to augment them may help with understanding and help those early pitfalls of, but I already put this in, why can't I do it this way?
Okay. Describe for us briefly one aspect of a current Providence Master Homeowners Association program that you would do differently, and why.
I think actually I would do the ARC disputes a little differently. I think I would shorten the time with them, either through technology or additional meetings. I think I would shorten the time response. As someone who has dealt with back and forth on ARCs, it's a little frustrating as a homeowner to wait for the next set of board meetings to come around, right? The next set of hearings. And I understand hearings are a little different, but when you can accomplish a lot via email, and we've been very successful in our sub board, we've been very successful in meeting in technologically advanced ways, or via email, or quick meetings like hey, let's have a one-off to just get this fixed. So I think that establishing a little tighter timeline on those might help homeowners reach their goals a little faster and in compliance with community standards.
Okay. And finally, the last question, is there anything else you would like to share that you feel has a bearing on your candidacy? I love living in Providence. It's been my home for a number of years. I think that overall we've had a lot of successes in our community, and I think that if we partner well together as a community, we can be very, very successful in the future. There's been talks of clubhouses and changing of things, and I think that change is a very, very positive force, and I embrace change. So, as this process moves forward, if I was a chosen candidate, I would probably only stay on the board, as long as I was elected, up to a couple terms maximum, and then I would want to see change. I'd want to see new opinions and new ideas and things come to the board. Otherwise, we just get stagnant and stale. So I think I would like people to know that change is important to me, and I would push for change where it makes sense. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.